That was my space. That was my boundary. This is where you see substance use, misuse, and abuse. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Dr. B, Dr. B Addiction Recovery, and the topic today is family enmeshment, but a little different take on it. As I get started, let me remind you, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. You might not like some of the content, but if you're enjoying it or using it, please subscribe. If you're inclined, press the like button and consider us on Patreon. Let me get started. Family enmeshment, okay? In this video, I'm assuming a little bit that you have some superficial understanding of family enmeshment. Look it up. If you don't, basically, it's often defined, and the crux of understanding it sort of depends on the idea of diffuse boundaries within two or more people, and usually families. This can be physical, emotional, psychological, social, all kinds. But when you read these definitions that are kind of put out by, in the DSM-5, or it's often discussed in media, or you could look it up online, I think sometimes so much of it is missed. And the people that really know this are the sort of very tuned in mental health workers that are dealing with this, folks, because somebody doesn't come into, a mental health clinic or a mental health doctor, psychologist, psychoanalyst, whoever they may be, counselor, and say, hey, I've been involved in family enmeshment since I was born, so I'm really messed up and my worldview is wrong and I have all these issues. That doesn't happen like that. But those of you that do understand it, and maybe some of the healthcare providers out there that deal with it and don't look at it in all the ways, I want to bring a couple of pieces of this, a couple of aspects of family enmeshment and substance abuse into the discussion and draw it out for you. Number one, folks that are kind of involved in an enmeshed family often kind of look at the family as a close-knit, tight family with a lot of family values. And it is anything but the case. And in fact, they often describe, let's say you have a mother and a daughter, right? And let's give an example of this. You have a mother and a daughter, and the daughter may be married to this guy. And the husband shares something with the daughter that is sort of intimate, not necessarily physically intimate, but intimate for their private space. In addition, there's a lot of other things going on in their life that, he hasn't openly shared, let's say, with the mother, okay? And let's say they're all sitting around having lunch or coffee, and all of a sudden, the daughter brings up that discussion that the husband had with her in front of the mother. And they both knew he meant that as a private thing. And he kind of has a knee-jerk reaction and turns around and says, hey, that was kind of, you weren't going to tell anybody about that. And the mother turns around and says, Amy and I share everything. There's no secrets between us. Now, let me point something out here. And, this is all going to sort of make sense, and you're going to see the importance of understanding this. When the mother says that Amy and I don't have secrets and we share everything and talk about everything, the husband's immediate reaction, he's been set up by the mother, right? He's been set up because what's he going to say? He's like, oh, I'm sort of a bad person here, right? I am telling Amy secrets. But if he had time, and then a couple of minutes after that, and I'll get to the consequences of this, a couple of minutes after that, he's like, okay. So he shares something else that really, for example, let's say he bought his wife a $30,000 diamond ring and she put it away in the bank, right? But she didn't tell her mother that. Maybe she's getting money from the mom. So he's like, all right, let me talk about everything. And he points out that she has a $30,000 ring in the bank. He brings that up, and he immediately sees the daughter being extremely uncomfortable, and the mother sort of taking a double look, thinking, whoa, I didn't know that. What's going on here? And what should have been his answer? And what does family enmeshment mean? Number one, the husband's response or lack of response is because he was set up to feel ashamed as he was promoting secrets between him and his significant other and wife. But if he thought about it long enough, what he should have responded to is, mother-in-law, I think that's great you and your daughter share everything. But what me and your daughter discussed was not for you and her to share. That was my space. That was my boundary. That was my unspoken contractual agreement with your daughter. And that space has been violated. That should have been the right answer, right? And then he went on to see that actually the daughter does lie to the mother. Okay? When you see this sort of enmeshed families, they're not there supporting each other, being completely open with each other, and facilitating each other's needs. They're there to promote the fantastic space that they have created for whatever end goal that they have in mind, and they will maintain that at any cost. We've seen an example of that recently, Alex Murdaugh, murder of his family. That was an enmeshed family going on for 20 plus years. If you're going to tell me that the family members weren't aware of something being wrong, that's a little bit insane. They all participate to maintain, promote, and upkeep his fantasy in this case, right? He probably sucked them all into this. You will see that in enmeshed families, and it's not about the truth, and it's not about supporting each other because they continuously lie to each other to gain what it is that they need and promote their own fantasies. And one of the offshoots of this, because once you start to lie and lie and lie and lie, and if you have this just really almost pathological need to maintain a fantasy, you start to reach for any tool within your disposal to make that easier, more palatable, more digestible, and more comfortable. And that's where drugs and alcohol come in to maintain a fantastic delusion so you can continue, and you won't continue because you will hit a wall at some point. But nevertheless, this is where you see substance use, misuse, and abuse come into those sort of dynamic family structures. And when I see that, it's not always necessarily true addiction. Oftentimes, they absolutely build physiological dependence. They absolutely build tolerance, okay? But it's not always necessarily addiction in the way that you see it in other areas. Now, these nuances don't make too much of a difference when you're treating them, except to understand it and maybe some finer details about the outcome. Nevertheless, keep in mind, substance abuse, alcohol, and drugs are a very facilitatory mechanism and a common tool for toxic or pathological personalities or collectives, in this case mini collectives, to maintain their fantasy. If you want to see it in a larger collective, take a look at Nazi Germany in the 20s before the war. The whole society was engaged in substance abuse, misuse, debauchery. They were in a fantastic space. And eventually, these illusions lead to delusions, and you hit a wall. I think the important point about this is that we note the potential and possibility for individual humans and collectives to go down that road. And I think in our current society, we are well on that road in many areas. And it's good to take heed and potentially consider our individual and collective mental health, not only to mitigate the amount of substance abuse, but to mitigate bigger, larger societal harms that are impending and on the way. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. Peace.